Hey, what's up, everybody? Thanks for hanging out with us as always on the Glosso America YouTube channel. Hit like and subscribe, and let's get after it. Hi, hello, and welcome to your favorite average to good podcast. Call it what you want. I'm Jimmy Conrad alongside Tony Meola and Charlie Davies, and we have a really fun show for you today. We have a very special guest, Tom Williams, football journalist extraordinaire, joining us to talk all things France and some maybe other things that are going along in countries that are adjacent to France. And then we're going to get into Tyler Adams did an interview with us. We want to break it down with all you guys. And we got some transfer news in general. So it should be a lot of fun. Well, speaking of Tom Williams, let's bring him on right now. I don't want to bury the lead, guys. Let's just get right into it because I'm excited to get some more information about what's happening. Lyon, who apparently were in financial despair, we're going down to Ligue 2. They're going to get relegated, but now they're back, Tom. Tom, great to see you as always. But how did they figure this out? It seemed like they were down. Now they're up. A lot of drama over here in Ligue 1.
Hey, guys. Yeah, great to be with you. I mean, it's an incredible story. I guess I have to go back to November for some of the background. That's when French football's financial watchdog, the DNCG, told Lyon that they weren't happy with the state of their finances and that they had until the end of the season to sort themselves out. And there was this hearing on June the 24th, when I think most people expected that, given that they'd had 5 or 6 months to sort themselves out, Lyon would be fine. And it was at the end of that hearing that we had this bombshell announcement that Lyon's punitive relegation to Ligue 2, to the French second division, had been confirmed. And then you just got this complete scramble. John Textor stands aside as Lyon president and is replaced by Michel Kang. And Michel Kang leads this desperate, panicked attempt to try and find enough money to inject into Lyon's coffers to prove to the DNCG, which is the body that oversees the finances of France's football clubs, that they had enough money to keep the club going. And that's what they've managed to do. We had that follow-up hearing a couple of days ago. And then the news landed yesterday that Lyon had survived. They're not going down to Ligue 2. They will remain in Ligue 1 in the French top flight. But there are conditions attached. And those conditions are that there are restrictions on the amount that they can spend on transfers, on player salaries. So it's not going to be the Lyon of recent years who are kind of targeting Champions League qualification, in the mix towards the top of the table. They're going to have to try really, really hard to balance the books. And in terms of their, what they're able to do in the transfer window, it just creates a huge amount of uncertainty.
Wait, Tom, really quick for context. Do French people like American owners in the French league? Yes or no? Real quick answer, yes or no?
I mean, look, John Textor ruffled a lot of feathers. I think instinctively French people didn't like him. This big, brash American guy coming in and telling them what's what. And then they realized there were certain things that they kind of did like. Like he was one of the few people who dared to challenge Nasser Al-Khelaifi, the all-powerful president of PSG. But there's been a suspicion all along. He talks a good game. Is he ever going to be able to back it up? And this suggests that, well, no, he hasn't been able to back it up. Oof. And he is probably the most unpopular man in Lyon right now. And I suspect he will not be showing his face there anytime soon.
Which, Tom, probably means there's a few other clubs around the world wondering if he could back it up as well. It seems like balancing the books in world football for clubs is like the hardest thing, right? Everyone has a different scale that they use. Is there a bigger picture in Ligue 1 right now that says, hey, this might be, I don't know, call it, one day an epidemic where teams in Ligue 1, I know the TV contract is really a big issue in France, but could this be an issue moving forward for other teams?
Yeah, I mean, there are huge financial problems in French football at the moment. You mentioned the TV deal. I mean, the French League, the LFP, has spent this summer cobbling together its own in-house TV channel because a deal with MediaPro collapsed in 2020, and then Amazon came in, and that didn't last, and then DAZN came in, and that didn't last, and they thought that Canal Plus, the historic broadcaster of Ligue 1, were going to come in, and they didn't. So some clubs have got no money whatsoever. Le Havre, one of the most historic clubs in French football, have not spent a centime on transfers in the last couple of years. We saw Bordeaux be relegated down to the 4th tier, because of their finances. So, finances are really tight in French football these days. There is a peculiarity here, though, in that the DNCG is quite a unique body in that it doesn't look at how much debt a club has. It doesn't necessarily look at revenue streams and things like that. All it looks at is whether a club has got enough money to do what it says it's going to do in its budget. And that was the issue with Lyon. We know that money has been coming in at Lyon. They saw Ryan Cherki to Manchester City for, 42 million euros. They got rid of quite a lot of players in January. They've got players with big salaries off their books in the last few months. But the issue seems to have been that the way that John Textor ran things was that he was constantly moving money around between the different clubs in the Eagle network. And the DNCG, when they came to look at the Lyon accounts, they didn't see the money that they were told was going to be there. And that's the problem. So that ultimately is what did for John Textor and what got Lyon into these problems. And then, as you say, Tony, the wider issues, a lot of which concern the TV rights situation, are causing a lot of French club presidents sleepless nights.
So, Tom, you talked about restrictions that Lyon have been placed due to this problem. I look at my old club, FC Sochaux, and the DCNG came from them, and they got relegated to the 3rd division, 3rd tier of French football. But if you're a player currently at Lyon, a Tanner Tessmann, what's going through your mind, one, and then a player like Matt Turner, who's potentially coming to a Lyon, probably doesn't make sense unless they sell Lucas Perry. So how close are Lyon to selling some of those assets? Malik Fofana, Lucas Perry, guys that will go for quite a lot of money, and for potential players coming into the team?
Yeah, it's really hard to know. We're right at the beginning of this process for Lyon. Michel Kang and Michael Gerlinger, who's the new chief executive, they gave a press conference yesterday at the Groupama Stadium. And, they were pretty bullish. They said, we're not going to have to rip things up. We're going to be targeting European football next season. But these are things you'd expect them to say. They're not going to say, oh, by the way, guys, if anyone wants to buy our players, here's my phone number. We need that money. So we won't know until those bids start going in and until they're tested. As far as Matt Turner is concerned, the move from Nottingham Forest was announced earlier on in the summer. And what Michel Kang said in this press conference yesterday was that deal was already in the budget that Lyon had presented to the DNCG, to French football's financial watchdog, which suggested that they still see that as a deal that's going to go through. So that would be good news for Matt Turner. And you mentioned, Charlie, Lucas Perry. That's another thing that could work in Matt Turner's favor, because Lyon are going to clearly have to sell some players, and Lucas Perry is one of their most saleable assets. He had a brilliant season last season in goal for Lyon. He's now a Brazilian international. He was linked with Neom, the Saudi Arabian club, recently. They went for Marcin Bulka of Nice in the end, but he's clearly a player who Lyon would probably not have too much difficulty selling. Tanner Tessmann's another interesting one. Wasn't playing much at the start of last season under Pierre Sage. And then when Sage was sacked by John Textor and replaced by Paulo Fonseca, he started getting more playing time. And he ended the season being one of the first names on the team sheet. So he's kind of belatedly, shown his value to Lyon. But when John Textor first went in front of the DNCG at the end of the season to present, his plan for the summer and how to bring in some funds, Tessmann was on a list of players who were transferable. And, Textor was saying, look, we know we need to raise funds, but look at all these players who we can sell. And Tessmann was one of those players. That was a couple of weeks ago, and things have moved on a lot since then. So Lyon find themselves with this dilemma, which is that they need to try and keep the team as competitive as possible. They've lost a lot of really important players. Cherki's gone to City. Nicola Tagliafico has gone. Alexandre Lacazette has gone. Big senior players. So they need to try and make sure that they don't lose everyone, but they also desperately need money. And that's the challenge now between now and the end of the transfer window, is trying to kind of walk that tightrope. So I'm sure they'll be getting bids for a lot of these players, and it might depend on which players they're able to sell first, before they can really decide what to do with some of the guys you mentioned.
Now, Tom, I definitely want to ask about another American-owned French team, Marseille. That is Frank McCourt, who owns them, and the potential move from Juventus for Tim Weah for reportedly around 15 million. I guess that's in advanced talks. We'll have to wait and see, and you'll probably give us some more info. And then obviously Flo Balogun at Monaco. But there's an interesting kind of side story to this Lyon news, because since they're going to stay in the top division, that means they qualify for the Europa League. And John Textor also has his hands in the cookie jar at Crystal Palace, right? He's an owner of them, and they, because they won the FA Cup, are in the Europa League. Or is that right? They're in the FA Cup. That makes sense? I think that's right.
Yeah. That's right. Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you for confirming that and validating my existence. I appreciate your time. But so now you can't have two teams in the same competition. So if Lyon does get into the Europa League, that means in theory Crystal Palace will not be able to play, drop into the Conference League, which would be really disappointing for an American at Crystal Palace, Chris Richards, who worked very hard, obviously, to win that trophy and to put themselves into this position. What do you know about this situation, and is it possible? Is there a world where we could see Palace and Lyon in the Europa League next season?
Yeah, the difficulty again is the role of John Textor. UEFA forbids clubs that belong to the same ownership structure from competing in the same competition. We've seen this in previous years with other clubs who've been part of multi-club ownership groups. Textor is obviously a shareholder at Crystal Palace, as well as being one of the owners of Lyon. He is in the process of selling that stake in Crystal Palace. It's a 43% stake, and he's agreed to sell it to Woody Johnson, co-owner of the New York Jets, but that deal hasn't yet been approved. Now, you'd think that if that deal can go through, then Textor, will no longer have an involvement with Crystal Palace. And then theoretically, that would enable Lyon and Palace to both go into the Europa League, because there isn't that crossover involving Textor. But time is against them. And it's unclear at the moment how quickly Palace can finalize, this acquisition of this controlling stake or this 43% stake by Woody Johnson. It's awaiting Premier League approval, so that could actually be what ends up, working against Palace, because clearly there is, the sale of Textor's stake in Palace is ongoing, but unfortunately for Palace, it just might not go through quickly enough for them to be able to go into the Europa League. And yeah, as you say, both Lyon and Palace qualified for the Europa League, but because Lyon qualified by virtue of their league position and had a higher league position than Palace, in UEFA's eyes, they have priority. So that's why Lyon are going to be in the Europa League, regardless of what happens. Palace might end up dropping down to the Conference League. Such a shame if that's what happens, because, Palace winning the FA Cup was one of the stories of last season, a fantastic story. You could argue that they might be better placed in the Conference League. They might stand a better chance of going far in it and winning it. But if you're a Crystal Palace fan, you've dreamt of European football your entire life.
I want to play Europa League. Don't give me the Conference League.
Exactly.
I earned it.
Exactly.
I earned it.
No, you're right. You're right. I'm trying to find the silver lining, but no, you're right, Charlie. I mean, it'd be a really unfortunate outcome for them.
I can't help but think there's some Jets fans out there going, no, Crystal Palace, don't do it. Don't do it. Right. Tom, let's talk about that Timothy Weah potentially to Marseille. What do we know? How far along is it? We have an idea of a range maybe on what the transfer fee do you think this is a good move for Timothy Weah?
Yeah, so the most recent reporting around this suggested that Marseille had made their interest known, but hadn't yet formulated an offer to Juventus. And Marseille can be a tricky club to deal with in the transfer window, because their president, Pablo Longoria, is not like a conventional president. He isn't just the guy who signs the checks. He's a former sporting director and has been a sporting director since his teens. So he has got his hands in every single deal. His knowledge of the European football market is second to none. And generally speaking, Marseille pursue multiple targets for any position at any given time. Timothy Weah is clearly a player who interests them, but there'll be other players on that list. I think one of the reasons why he appeals to Marseille is because They need to replace Luis Enrique, the Brazilian winger, who had a fantastic season at Marseille last season, playing as a wing back and ended up leaving to go to Inter Milan. So I think Weah's versatility will appeal to Marseille. The fact he can play fullback, he can play winger, he can play left wing, he can play right wing. That's the kind of player who appeals to Roberto De Zerbi. They spent most of last season, Marseille, playing with wing backs, playing with a back three and with wing backs, but they ended up playing in a 4-3-3. Who knows how they're going to start the season? He likes, the tactical flexibility, De Zerbi. So I think that explains why, Weah might appeal. But yeah, as far as we know, no official bid yet from Marseille.
Tom, I think I would actually love this move for Timothy Weah because of also his experience already in Ligue, playing at Lyon, playing right back, left back. He knows the league well. He's had success. I think this would be a great move for him. Now I want to switch our focus to another player in Liga, Folarin Balogun, who's dealt with a number of injuries at Monaco, but they're in the Champions League. This is a massive club. Where do you see Folarin Balogun on the depth chart currently going into this season, and what do you think his prospects are for this season?
I mean, he's been so unfortunate because he had that fantastic loan at Reims, and everyone wanted him. He ends up going to Monaco and struggled to begin with. And the feeling was that he was a guy who needed space in behind. And Monaco being one of the leading clubs in Liga, teams tend not to attack them. Teams tend to retreat. And that was something he had to adapt to. You go back to the start of last season and you felt like he was things were just starting to fall into place. He scores in 3 successive Ligue 1 games. And you think, okay, here we go, lift off. And then he gets this shoulder injury and it ruins his season. And while he's recovering from the shoulder injury, Monaco sign Mika Biereth, the Danish international, his former youth team teammate at Arsenal. And so Monaco have now got this, this sort of galaxy of attacking talent. You've got Biereth, you've got Balogun, you've got Breel Mbolo, the Swiss international, you've got George Elenikena, very exciting young teenage striker. So I think if Balogun is fit, there's definitely a place for him in this team. I mean, Mbolo and Biereth have a good partnership, but Mbolo just doesn't score enough goals.
No.
And, the fact that Balogun and Biereth played together at Arsenal, there are, clips online of them, sort of linking up, scoring goals together. They didn't play that many matches. This is sort of 2021, 22, I think. But, there's some kind of connection there between them. So, I think if Balogun can stay fit, Monaco are back in the Champions League again this season. You've got Ligue 1, you've got the Coupe de France. That there is going to be rotation. And he did show signs last season that he can do it in a Monaco shirt. Even at the end of the season, he recovers from a shoulder injury, gets back into the team, scores, I think it was against Lyon towards the end of the season, and then gets an ankle injury. So he misses the last 2 Ligue 1 games. So every time a door is opened for him at Monaco, it's immediately been closed by injury. So I think if he can have a full preseason, avoid injuries, he could definitely have a big season.
Yeah, Tom, I want to piggyback off of this conversation. What do you think his ceiling is, Flo Balogun's? He's 24 years old, obviously staying healthy. Let's just keep that. That's the base. He's definitely got to stay healthy here. But Monaco seems like obviously a top club in one of the top leagues in Europe. Do you see another move in his future? What kind of marks do you think he's going to hit? I guess we're all kind of curious as to what his ceiling is ultimately over here.
Yeah, I mean, again, go back to that season at Reims, and I think it showed what he's capable of doing if he's playing week in, week out. If he's the go-to guy. The difficulty, as it is so often for players of this age, is that the higher up the ladder you go, the more competition there is at the big clubs. You can start week in, week out for a club like Reims, but you go to Monaco and there's games where you're going to be on the bench, and then you might have a run of games where you don't score and you might get dropped and you have to bounce back from that. And he's had to contend with the injury issues as well. So it's still kind of hard to ascertain exactly where his ceiling is. But, I think if he's playing regularly in a good team that are making chances for him, he's a 20 goal a season striker. But we just need to see that now, and I think that's why this is going to be such a big season for him, particularly with the World Cup at the end of it. If he can avoid injuries, if he can strike up a partnership with Biereth or at least, get regular game time, he can start proving that, he can be the go-to guy for a Champions League level club.
With Ansu Fati and you're talking
Pogba,
about
baby.
Paul Pogba.
Pogba as well. I mean, who doesn't want to play in a team like that? Like,
come on, let's go. I'll be hyped if I'm a striker in that team.
Yeah, it's going to be an interesting year for Monaco and for French football overall. Tom Williams, thank you so much for your time. We appreciate all your insights.
Top
and
man.
We're
My
definitely going
pleasure.
to have you back on
My
at some
pleasure. Thank you,
point
guys.
to keep us updated. Tom Williams, everybody. We're going to take our first break. When we come back, more of the good stuff. Don't go anywhere.
Critics agree Landman is a hit.
We roll the dice one last time.
Men die. Oil companies don't.
Dude, this was the first time I played so many minutes in a season in a long, long time. And to be quite frank with you, I was happy that I was able to even make it through the tournament. My body was, prepared, but not necessarily prepared, if you know what I mean. I think from a mental perspective, getting through the entire Premier League campaign for the first time was something I was really, really proud of. Was my body in a position to play at the highest level come Gold Cup? No chance, but I know I have to be there and continue to try and support these boys and give myself an opportunity as well to continue to try and cement myself in this national team and leave a legacy behind. So, for me, it wasn't perfect every game. I knew it wasn't going to be perfect, but it was more about being there, competing at the highest level I knew I could be, and just supporting the group.
All right, we're hearing there from Tyler Adams. We conducted a full interview with him. So if you haven't seen it or heard it yet, go over to the Glosso America YouTube channel and check it out. It is very interesting. I think it's funny we picked that clip because he mentioned, it's funny to hear it again because we obviously lived it in real time, Tones and Charlie, but he mentions maybe 2 or 3 times in that just one segment that he just had to be there for the boys. Chuck, I think he was actually answering your question. And I guess obviously that feels in stark contrast to maybe some other players that decided not to come in.
Everybody's different, Jim. Come on, Jim. People built different. I
get it. I get it.
And it's ironic too because Tyler Adams has dealt with so many injuries, right? And think about how his career has had to kind of take some twists and turns through the back injuries, right? Forget the hamstring and just always, because he's so active and always wants to close down and cover so much ground, naturally he's picked up these injuries throughout his career. So he finally gets through a season, and he talked about how proud he was. It would be so easy to pick up the phone and say, Putch, I can't do it. I need a break. I'm out.
Right.
But he's built different. He's saying, hey, I need to cement my place in the team. I don't think anything's given. That's 1. 2, these are boys. Notice how he said the boys. Like these are young kids, unexperienced. He felt he could give them a lot of insight on how to progress, how to get better, and how to potentially make the World Cup squad next summer. And he was willing to take that chance, that risk. It's a sacrifice, no doubt, but he was willing to take it. So I give him a ton of credit for being as open and transparent as he always is, right? I think that's one of the benefits of having Tyler Adams in your team. He's a leader, and he's vocal, and he's not afraid to share his thoughts and feelings. So that's just from his perspective. He's willing to do whatever it takes.
Yeah, heart on his sleeve. I mean, that's part of, I think, what makes him special.
And he's got kids, Jimmy, too. This is, it's like, he's a family man. He's got a son, right? That's also part of it, because it's easy to say if you don't have kids, you could say, "Hey, I just need a vacation." He's got kids. He's got a son. So all the other excuses are out the window. He's there. And he could have easily said, "I need family time. I need a break from me personally, mentally, but I also have a family."
Yeah. No, he was there, and he played some important minutes for us. Tones, your big takeaway from that interview with Tyler?
Yeah, great interview, and one worth certainly listening to. Charlie said it right. He's open. He's transparent. He's not afraid to answer any questions. I think he comes off as a leader. My guess is that if his teammates ask him a question, he's a straight shooter. He doesn't beat around the bush. He made it clear, as we just talked about, that he wanted to be here and it was important to him. He clearly was, in his words, struggling a little bit with his body. And in that, it's interesting because he said somewhere along the line, like, I know I didn't play well this tournament. And I think he was referencing a little bit the final, if I'm not mistaken. It wasn't his best game, but he just wanted to be out there and battle. And he talked about the substitution. So definitely worth listening to. And of course, when you hear him say, I wanted to be here, the initial thought is that, that's a direct link to what happened with Christian Pulisic and him not being there because he was tired. But remember, these two guys are pretty good friends. So I don't know that he's taking a shot at him. I think it was more, this is how I feel. This is the way that I go about my business. This is me.
Tony's doing a robot.
That's my favorite version of Tones.
The Tone's robot.
He broke up.
He gone.
He's gone.
He's
said, gone.
Hey, but I'll tell you one thing. Tyler was speaking his truth. I'll finish Tony's.
Yeah, everybody's got their own path, right?
Right.
And that's the path he chose to take.
100%.
Yeah, I mean, obviously it feels like there's some underlying messaging that people could take as a direct shot at Christian. He could be sending a message.
It's not. Let's be
not.
real.
No. They're close.
They're tight. They're boys. They're homies. They've been all the way through up with the youth national team. This was not a subliminal message to Christian. Hey, look at what I'm doing, and you chose to stay home and take a break. That's not at all what he's doing here. What he's doing is, this is me. This is who I am. I needed a break too, but I decided to show up because that's who I am. That's basically what he's saying.
Yeah, it's I guess my mom used to always say different strokes for different folks, A shout out, by the way, for everybody that's old enough to remember the show Different Strokes. I loved it. Shout out to Gary.
In the early 80s?
The early 80s, baby. Let's go. Yeah. Absolutely loved it. Okay, let's get into transfer news, resident number 9, as we wait for Big Tones to come back. I think you just hit the wrong button.
No, he had a reboot. He had a reboot.
Tony reboot Meola. Okay. Damian Downs makes a move from Cologne in the second Bundesliga. They just got promoted. They won the second Bundesliga. And now he's making the move over to Southampton in the championship. They just got relegated from the Premier League. But they got a new manager in place in Will Still, who obviously has his own incredible backstory. Very young manager who took over a French team and did very well. Flo Balogun played for him at Reims. And so I'm curious about how he's going to do making the move from France to Southampton. And I also am curious about how Damian Downs is going to make his move from the second Bundesliga to Southampton as well. But they're excited about having him, and they really feel like he's going to be a nice fit in the puzzle that they're putting together. How are you feeling about this move? Just in general, moving from the second Bundesliga, being on the precipice of going, like, you could have been in the Bundesliga, but instead electing to go play in the championship.
Yeah, you know how I feel about the championship, but I think it's a good move for him because you're going to a club that was just in the Premier League, and typically the clubs that were just in the Premier League, they have ammunition to fight to go right back up, right? Because they had all of the resources to try and stay up. But typically, the level of quality that you already have within the team, there's a structure, will suit him. And they'll be one of the better teams in the championship. Whether they go right back up or not, I think it's good. Plus, you're looking around of who else am I competing with for a World Cup spot? Haji Wright, Daryl Dike, Josh Sargent, all these guys in the championship, right? Yeah. Although he could be moving Josh Sargent to a top division.
We'll get into him in a second. Keep going on Downs though.
But I think it's a great shop window for him in particular. Whether he excels and goes up to the Premier League with Southampton next year and wins a starting spot and does well, or he does really well and gets sold because there are a lot of eyes on the championship.
Yeah, just your thoughts on the championship in general, and how you feel about it. I'm just curious to get your thoughts. We're going to get into Josh Sargent in a second, but I agree with you that Southampton, because they're coming down and because they're going to get that balloon balloon payment from the Premier League for dropping down, they're going to be really primed to go right back up. So this could be a really good and thoughtful move, not only in the near term, but to the long term for Damien Downs as well. And again, I'm very curious about Will Still as a manager. I think obviously he's young and he's improving, but when he did work with Flo Balogun, it wasn't Ren, it was Reims. Yeah, I'll get it down at some point. But he got 20 goals out of Flo Balogun, so I'm very curious to see how he can work with Damien Downs and help him maximize his potential. Okay, let's talk Josh Sargent. You brought him up. He's getting some interest from a couple teams that just got promoted in the Premier League. You have Big Tones is back. He's got Burnley that's interested. You got Leeds that are interested. In particular, you got Roma and Udinese and Serie A that are interested. Before we bring back Tones into the equation, I want to hear from you, number 9, about Josh Sargent.
Give me Roma.
Roma?
100%. Serie A, get him to Serie A. Udinese, I think he'll still play, and it wouldn't be a bad spot. But Roma, talk about a massive jump from the championship to a side like Roma with the level of quality you have around you. I think Roma would be a great spot for him. And if you're a player that's really trying to push yourself and climb up the ladder with the U.S. men's national team, put yourself in a strong position if you're playing every week to make sure that you're on that World Cup team and maybe have a say, that's the move you got to make.
Yeah, I love that Gianpiero Gasparini is now at Roma too. Obviously had tremendous success with Atalanta, and I do think that Sargent would benefit from this guy. This guy maximizes potential of his players for sure. Big Tones, where do you want to see Josh Sargent?
Roma's a big jump, man. Remember the pressure at Roma. It's the biggest city in Europe that's not had a great deal of success over the years. Of course, last year at the end of the year, when Ranieri comes in, they turn things around. You're going to deal with Dovbek, Shomurodov, who had a great end of the season last year. I got to be honest, it would be great if he went there. And Charlie, you said at the end, if he played, I just don't see him playing there. I don't.
Yeah, I told you, I'd say my preferred move for him, like I've said from the very beginning, is to go to Sporting. Go to Lisbon.
Yeah, now it's open.
Right? It's open.
Right.
And now you're in a great position to, play in Europe and play in the Portuguese league and score. You're one of the better teams already. That for me would be the best next move. But I would love for him to go to Roma if that's a real possibility and prove himself in play. If you do that, you might as well get that roster ready and sign him up, because he's going to be playing. He'll be on that World Cup team next summer if he's playing at Roma.
No, 100%.
Yeah. If he's playing,
wonder.
100%. Yeah.
I wonder what that looks like. And it doesn't sound like a lot of the players have too much communication with Mauricio Pochettino, maybe more with the assistants. But if I was Josh Sargent, I would actually want to inquire and get the thoughts and opinions of Mauricio Pochettino. Like, which club do you think is going to best position me to get? I want to get on the World Cup roster. Like, so go right to the horse. Let's hear from the horse's mouth. What? Now, there's no guarantees, and obviously it's just insight. You don't have to base every decision on what Mauricio Pochettino wants, but getting that insight as to where do you think would be a nice fit for me? What's going to give me the best chance to get on this team? Because I think I deserve it. I wonder what Mauricio Pochettino would say. I assume to cut your teeth at the highest level possible, but maybe he sees some value in going to a Leeds or going to a Burnley. I mean, going to a recently promoted team that's a grind. I don't know if I want to see him at either.
No,
Burnley
what about Cole Tripp? He's saying Leeds. Like, I get the chance of playing at Leeds, but you don't want to go to Leeds, no?
Just a recently promoted team. It's just a different. He's done that before with Norwich when he first left the Bundesliga, right? He came over, and then it's a dogfight every single game.
You get no chances to score goals, man. You just don't.
Norwich,
you played as a right winger.
Yeah.
Okay, you get one, and what's the narrative going to be at the end of the year, right? Yeah. My gosh, Josh Sargent can't score goals, right? Or whoever plays there, they can't score goals. because that's what it always is, because those teams, and we're seeing a big disparity now in these teams that come up. What we saw, all three teams go back down this year, right? So you're looking at a moment where it's the disparity is so big that if you're not in the right spot, like Jimmy said, I mean, you're just surviving every day. And you, from an attacking standpoint, you come at the end of the year like, oh, I had 8 chances to score goals this year, where like other guys are having 8 chances a game to score goals, so that's kind of the difference.
Yeah, I mean, I'm seeing some comments as well. Cole says best option to stay in the EPL and get paid well. Others like he's not going to play at Roma. So this is from Nick. So why even bother with that? I don't know. You kind of bet. You bet on yourself though. Like that's part of being a player. You got to bet on yourself at some point.
That's the thing, Jimmy. There's a lot of places that players would say, or coaches or fans would say, you're never going to play. But you're saying you're betting on yourself to say, if I want to give myself the best chance, I got to go.
Got to go.
I could say in the championship the rest of my career and be fine and get paid well, be one of the best strikers in the championship.
Maybe get promoted.
Maybe get promoted. Right. Maybe not, and be cool with it. Or you say, why do we play the game? To go as far as we possibly can. We play the game because we love it, but we want to push. How good can we be? How far can I get? What's the biggest club? What's the biggest competition I can play in? So for Josh Sargent, he's been in the championship for too long. For me, too long. If I'm him, Gyökeres is leaving. I got my agent on the phone, and I'm telling him, get me to Sporting. That's a great spot for a striker. I can score a lot of goals for this club. I've proven it in the championship. That's where Gyökeres came from. Let me go.
Yeah.
Right? And I think that'd be a fantastic spot for him.
Yeah, there's some value. I agree with you, Chuck, that if he could play in Europe, right, and maybe like, okay, whatever you want to say about the Portuguese league, competitive, but ultimately it's a 2 or 3 team race, 3 horse race. But if you could get in there and then cut your teeth playing in the Champions League group stages, right? You're going to get 8 games now because of the new format. You get 8 games and cool, you're going to get some good opponents. And then all of a sudden you're demonstrating that you can hold your own and have success against some bigger clubs around Europe. That's where you start to kind of turn the page, or the way people see you becomes a little bit different.
Yeah, there's real pressure there because we're talking about, is the Portuguese league a better league than the championship? And
it's not as competitive, but it might be.
You're not playing as many matches, right? I think when you're looking at Ajiman, who's going to be in the championship, Damian Downs in the championship, right? Sargent, who was in the championship, and Haji Wright in the championship. So you have all these U.S. men's national team second tier, if you will, strikers after Balogun and Pepe, all competing in the same league. So it's going to be pretty easy to scout because you're saying, hey, how many goals and assists, how many chances are you creating? How many touches are you having? What is your game compared to all the other same players in the same league? But for Sargent, he's saying, all right, I've done it in this league. Sainz, who just went to Porto, right? In the same league, went to Porto. So why couldn't I go to a team that's going to be competing in Europe when the pressure to play at Porto or Sporting or Benfica is intense?
Yeah.
You're always competing for the league title, and you're always competing for a Champions League or Europa League spot, essentially. So I think that's a wonderful spot to be in if you're Josh Sargent. Maybe the next step, instead of making a jump to a Roma, like Tony said, where you're going against, a Dovbyk, for instance.
Yeah, and there's so much pressure at that club. There right now, there's so much pressure. Not that you don't want the pressure. There's like a different pressure at Roma right at the moment as it exists, and we've seen it over the years. And it took a guy like Ranieri. We're interested to see what happens with a new manager, because Gasperini, as you recall, he's had fights with all of his big players over the years, and he's called them out. And you wonder, like, if you're doing that publicly, like, what if Josh Sargent has a run of like 4 or 5 games where it doesn't go well, and which is part of being a pro.
It could happen anywhere. It could happen anywhere,
right? Though. And like you got to be able to react to him, because he's pretty tough apparently behind closed doors on these guys, and that could be a great thing for someone in the end. So. I just don't, but the overriding factor with Roma, I just don't at the moment, unless they're making moves that we don't know about. And then Josh is like the guy that's going to replace somebody. Like, I just don't see him playing all that much.
Yeah,
but
that's not
hey,
gonna be good
Champions
for him
League
either.
is another kettle of fish. So if I'm going to Sporting and they see me as a great replacement, remember Josh Sargent's still young. That would be a great move for him. Champions League, Portuguese League. It's
Chuck,
one you have to consider.
the question that we all want to know, though, do you think you could beat Josh Sargent in a foot race right now? You add him to the Jack McLean race.
No.
All right, just want to make sure that was said. Everything out there. Okay, last transfer news that we're hearing. Celta Vigo from La Liga is one of the teams interested in Diego Luna. That is from Tom Bogert. Tommy Scoops is reporting that. What are we saying about this move, Big Tones? I kind of like seeing Diego Luna potentially cut his teeth in another league just to prove that he can do it anywhere he plays.
Yeah, you're talking about, didn't they qualify for Europa League, right, last year, Celta Vigo? And I think they did. If not, it's Conference League. But they were one of the surprise teams last year for a long time, right? They were kind of hanging around for a while, and then they dropped off, and they picked it up a little bit towards the end. I remember they won a few games in the last 5 or 6. So, yeah, I mean, one thing about teams like Celta Vigo is that they're not going to spend money on guys. It's not like the Premier League. Well, you'll spend money on guys that might be a second player in that position or a third player in that position. When they spend money, they're going to play guys because they don't have the luxury of some of the teams, Real Madrid or Barcelona. I don't know how they spend money, but apparently they keep spending money. But they don't have the luxury of bringing guys in and not using guys. Their rosters aren't that deep. So this would be good. And now you're going to add, of course, European games, so they're going to need some more players to play. Be interesting to see them in La Liga, no doubt about it.
Yeah, with Celta Vigo, they did finish in 7th. They qualified for the Europa League, so obviously that would be a fun competition. They had the 5th best attack in La Liga, 59 goals, but also the fourth worst defense. So it'd be an interesting team to join. I guess the question, though, Chuck, is, and I'm going to kind of piggyback off of what Tyler says in the chat here about how a move out of MLS could be dangerous for Luna, because if he's not playing ahead of a World Cup, that could hurt his chances. Do you feel like maybe a move for Diego Luna would be better after the World Cup? Like, that's the biggest shop window you could have, is the World Cup itself. And I benefited from that shop window. I didn't take my chance. I had a chance to go to Southampton or Sunderland. I couldn't get my work permit. You know what? I don't have to get into my feelings about that. But do you feel like it would be better, Chuck, for him to just stay in MLS? It's obviously not working against him from Mauricio Pochettino's perspective. He's being trusted regardless of where he's playing. But you take that risk of maybe not playing if he goes to La Liga.
I think we all know when you're in the shoes of Diego Luna and a La Liga club that's playing in Europa League comes for you, typically they're not coming for you to just not play. They're going to give you the opportunity to play. And you're not going to leave unless they say, hey, we see you in this position. We see you playing as a left winger in a 4-3-3 and tucking inside, whatever that place is. This is the plan. If there's a plan for Diego Luna and you're going to Celta Vigo, I'm gone. I get you're playing every week at RSL, but you want to keep progressing. And also, it's one thing to say, I'm going to be in the 26 for the World Cup. Great. I want to be in the starting 11. I want to have a major impact next summer, not just being a part of it. And if you want to continue to grow and progress and play in La Liga, this is the move you make. So I understand playing it safe and saying, oh no, I'm going to play every week. I want to play it safe. We all know if you have the dog in you, if you want to make the most of what you have, you're taking that move. This isn't like you're taking a move to Atletico Madrid or Barcelona or Real Madrid. And hey, I'm going to be 5th or 6th on the depth chart, and I'm going to be loaned all over the place. This was an actual move where you're expected to play. You're going to have the opportunity to play. So if I'm Diego Luna, I'm gone. I am gone to Celta Vigo. I think this is a brilliant move for him. This isn't a massive club with a big name. This is a club that has a good infrastructure, a good style of play. So for me, this is a great next step in Diego Luna's career trajectory.
Okay, and as a reminder, Luca De La Torre played there and got regular minutes there. And if you guys think that Luca is good enough to cut his teeth there, then why not Diego Luna? Obviously different player profiles, but still kind of in the same areas of the field. All right, we're going to take our last break of Call What You Want. When we come back, we're going to get into the summer of soccer and what that means for the World Cup next summer, because it could have some implications, especially due to the conditions, whether it's the fields, the weather, whatever. So keep it right here.
Hi. Novocaine?
Novocaine! Novocaine is now streaming on Paramount Plus.
You're gonna love this.
Oh, you're strong! It's wildly entertaining and an absolute blast.
I'm in.
Novocaine, rated R, now streaming on Paramount Plus.
Ooh, baby, welcome back in to Call It What You Want. Average to Goodness is our game, and hopefully that's enough for you. Conrad Dino, alongside Chuck Wagon and Big Tones. And the summer of soccer is almost to its end here in the United States. The Club World Cup finally got to their final two teams, Big Tones. We got Chelsea, who are the Conference League champions, taking on PSG, who are the Champions League champs. It's all popping off. And I'm actually surprised that Chelsea made it as far as they did. They just always seem like a jumble of a lot of talented players that aren't always rowing the boat in the same direction. But under Enzo Maresca, they continue to get a little bit better and a little bit better. But PSG, not a big surprise, Big Tones, absolutely rolled Real Madrid in the semifinals 4-0. What was funny is I actually kind of liken Real Madrid's performance to how Inter Miami played against PSG, where a couple bad defensive mistakes, really looked outclassed, and both games ended 4-0. So Inter Miami and Real Madrid have some similarities in this run. But PSG, just a different gravy, an absolute different gravy. And they seem to be handling the heat pretty well as well. But let's just talk about your thoughts about those two teams, and then we'll get into kind of the conditions of these games, Big Tones.
Yeah, and let's throw Atletico Madrid in there in match day one.
Yeah, they lost 4-0 as well.
Yeah, so three teams have something in common with PSG. Man, did they look good yesterday. Well, they look good. And I love Luis Enrique talking about Mikel Arteta had 5 years here and Pep Guardiola had this. And, and he's like, I'm here to win now. I think we're going to win now. I feel like we're going to win it again. Like, I'm paraphrasing, but he made no bones about the fact that they're really freaking good, man, and so entertaining to watch and very Barcelona-esque that, the Barcelona teams of 10, 15 years ago. And I think he's clearly a manager that knows what he wants. He's had the luxury of being able to bring the players that he wants in these, I'll say with air quotes, projects, right? And are you willing to bet against them to win Champions League right now when you watch them play? I don't know. Maybe something will happen on the break.
They have no weaknesses. They have no weaknesses.
It's amazing. It's amazing. And, you guys know Luka Modric has been my favorite player for the last 15 years. And I'm so excited that it looks like he's going to Milan. Vitinha now has been my favorite player for 2 seasons now. I didn't know, I knew about him, but I didn't know much about him until last year. I think it was the goal, it was the goal against Barcelona. What was that, quarterfinals? But the way he plays the game is what keeps me glued to the TV, just like Luka Modric kept me glued to the TV for years watching it. They have everything, and there's not – they hit you from every side. Doesn't matter. They're not right side dominant, left side dominant, middle, midfield, forward. They hit you every way you can possibly be hit. So fun team to watch.
Okay, so only one player in the starting 11 over the age of 30. That's Marquinhos. We know what PSG can do. Chuck, let's just play the other side of it.
Yeah.
Do you give Chelsea any chance here? I mean, I think the addition of João Pedro gives them a little bit more of a dynamic option up top as opposed to Liam Delap and or Nico Jackson. But and I know this is an American, U.S.-based podcast, but I do want to talk about the Club World Cup final really quick. Do you give Chelsea any chance in this final?
Well, you can't ever say, I don't give them a chance. This is Chelsea. It's not – they're in a final. Any team has a chance, but realistically,
come on.
I don't see Chelsea being able to stop how dynamic PSG are. There are teams that typically favor a side. They're more dominant on the left or right side because of one player in particular, maybe a Lamine Yamal, for instance, for Barca. Yeah, they have – players who can hurt you for all over the pitch, but primarily when Lamine Yamal's on the ball, that's where the trouble's coming from. Rafinha's great, but Lamine Yamal is a different beast. But when you watch PSG, it could be Hakimi, it could be Nuno Mendes, it could be Dembele. I look at this at Kvaratskhelia 1v1. You just don't want to. It's really difficult to deal with this team. I love Luis Enrique as a manager. I love how he holds everyone accountable. They are a team. You can see that every single player is going to work for the team. That's why they're so good. There's no one taking plays off. They've smacked everybody. And now if you're Inter Miami, you don't feel so bad. You were humiliated, but Real Madrid were humiliated. So Inter Miami are like, hey, look, if Real Madrid are getting humiliated like that with the players that they have, and we did pretty damn well to only get beat 4-0, to be honest. So I think this PSG side are going to be dominant for a while. This is they have what it takes to be running the table for the next 3 seasons.
Yeah, it's what's interesting is I wonder if Luis Enrique says to Xabi Alonso, the new manager of Real Madrid, Kylian Mbappe is your problem now. As talented as he is, it really is in some ways refreshing that if you get a bunch of people that buy in and are willing to work on both sides of the ball, and you add the talent that PSG clearly have, it just makes you unstoppable. It should be a great final that's happening on Sunday. But one of the big themes, Big Tones, throughout this Club World Cup in particular, especially as you have teams and clubs from other countries coming to American shores, how hot it is here in the summer. And the kickoff times have all been around 3 p.m. for the most part, so they can reach a European or more of a global audience. Well, that's going to be the same kickoff times that are going to be happening in the World Cup next summer. And that has been making a lot of people unhappy. I got a couple quotes here. This one's actually after PSG beat Atletico Madrid 4-0 at the Rose Bowl. It's around 90 degrees. It's a lot tamer on the West Coast than it is on the East Coast. But Marcos Llorente said, it's impossible. It's terribly hot. My toes were sore. My nails were hurting. I couldn't stop or start. In the end, it's incredible. Since it's the same for everyone, there's no complaints. So obviously saying that you can't make much of an excuse. Chelsea's coach, Enzo Maresca, said, I always tried to avoid excuse. I always tried to be honest. It's not about excuses. It's about reality. It's an excuse when it's not hot. And we say it's hot. That's an excuse. But if it's hot, it's hot. But here we are, and we're trying to do our best. That sounds like Dr. Seuss wrote that quote, by the way. I don't know what the hell is going on with that.
What did he say? Which way did he go?
It's hot. Right. But Alexander Bielefeld, FIFPro's Director of Policy and Strategic Relations, also added, this tournament is probably a really good wake-up call for everyone to look at the scheduling of matches in future tournaments. I think he's referencing the World Cup next summer. And our very own Tab Ramos, he said this about the heat at the Pontiac Silverdome for the 1994 World Cup. Once we walked out onto the field, it was like 150 degrees. You could barely think. The Silverdome was a soup. Fans were being carried out with heat exhaustion from just sitting there, and we were about to run around in it for 90 minutes. So Tone, it's a nice segue for you to kind of talk about the conditions and how that impacted the 1994 World Cup. And do you think the U.S. benefited from that, or any teams benefited from that were used to playing in those types of conditions?
That Silverdome was it was so muggy in there, you couldn't breathe. There was no air circulation in that place. It was so hot, and of course it was the first time they'd ever done that. We were told that there was air conditioner in the stadium, but I'm not quite sure it got down to the field or the dressing rooms for that matter. But yeah, look, it's going to be hot. We know that. We dealt with it in 1994. We're going to deal with it again. The one that sticks out to me in 94 was it was down in Dallas, I believe, with the Netherlands, right? It was a Netherlands-Brazil and everything coming out of that game. And the 3 p.m. kickoffs are made around Europe. I tend to think, like, if you made them a little bit later, let's say England's the easy one because it's on the closer to the west side. Spain's fairly easy. But you're talking about, Croatia's and moving forward into the Eastern European blocks. Don't you think, that if you put those games and they started at 11, 12, even 1 o'clock in the morning, people would still stay up and watch them?
Yes.
For their national, hell, I was in South Korea and Japan. I can't tell you how many times people said to me, I was up at, 4 o'clock in the morning watching games or 1 o'clock, 2, whatever, you know what I mean? Like, we all did it. And I think there would actually be like some allure to it. But but of course we know that they're catering all of this to European teams, right? South America is not affected by the time zones, right? So those games will probably be a lot of those games in the later time slot where they can't do that for the European teams. So it's tricky. The world's not going to get any smaller, and unless we all go on the same clock, it's not going to happen. But with regards to the Heat, I'm with Thomas Muller, right? His quote, just deal with it, basically, right? He said a couple of 2 weeks ago, whatever it was. So you got to deal with it. It's part of it. They deal with it in South America, so what? Enzo Maresca, your team doesn't play in the Heat. Well, this tournament you got to play in the Heat.
He got to the final. So what's he moaning about ultimately? So I think what's interesting is that, remember when we were predicting where we thought the final was going to be, Chuck? And there was a lot of chatter. There's like 3 locations. There was LA at SoFi Stadium. You had New York and MetLife, and we had Dallas as one of them because Dallas was covered. It's in a dome. You could control the temperature, and you could still have a good kickoff time that satisfies everybody around the world. You could even go at like 11 a.m. local, and everybody would be able to see it. No, you could though. But I mean, I'm just saying that because that's
you wouldn't, because that's not fair to the players. What do you mean 11 a.m.? You wake up and you're playing? This is a training session?
I get
Charlie,
it.
what time do you think we played at the Silver Dome? I believe that kickoff was 10 a.m., if I'm not mistaken, with pregame meal at 6 a.m.
No,
in the Silver Dome.
That's just,
it was terrible.
I get it.
Someone could look that up, that kickoff time. I think it was 10 or 11.
Let's go back to Thomas Muller's quote. Chuck, they got to deal with it, right? There's going to be stuff that doesn't go the way that they want. It's not the same as always, and they're going to have to adjust and figure it out. But I would still rather see a game, the World Cup final. I would rather see that in a controlled environment than playing at 3 p.m. in a hot, muggy day in New York, which is where the game's going to be, where the game's slower. You're not going to see these guys performing at the optimal level. I would rather them kick off a little bit earlier in Dallas than playing a hot, muggy day in New York. That's just me. I don't know where you net on.
Why not later?
You could have it later, but I'm just saying I'd rather have the game in Dallas. That's where you have controlled environment.
Give me a 5 p.m. game. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I hear you. But so what would you prefer? So you'd rather have it in Dallas at a 5 p.m. game?
No, there's not a single player in world football that wants a game before noon. I'll tell you that right now. There's not a single person. And I'll tell you, for the most part, if you're talking about a World Cup final, 6 p.m. is, I think, ideal. Not too late, but way past having to deal with a hot sun. You know what I mean? So I think there's a nice buildup if you're talking about 5 or 6 p.m. kickoff versus the earlier side. And you don't want a 10 or 9 p.m. kickoff, right? But I think later in the day is typically always best for athletes, given you get to, not wake up and play. There's a buildup. Guys can get mentally focused and ready. Everyone has their routines, but that's when you're going to get the best quality on the pitch. That's what I would want. I want best quality on the pitch.
Yeah, you want to see the world's best players in the biggest moment playing in the best situations. Anyway, we'll have plenty of time to talk about that. We got a year or 11 months.
Give me 6 p.m. when the mosquitoes are out. Let's go.
All right, let's talk about U.S. Open Cup because the semifinals are almost set. We have 3 quarterfinals that are done. Minnesota United needed to come back from a goal down to beat Chicago Fire in extra time 3-1. Omar Gonzalez got an early red card there, which pretty much sunk the Fire. They were the team that was trying to become the first MLS team to win 5 Open Cups, so they get knocked out. Minnesota United's going to be hosting the semi. If they can beat Austin, who beat the Quakes, came back twice and then won in penalties to make that one. That's going to be their first ever semifinal. Minnesota United's going to host the semi. If they can beat Austin, they'll also host the final. So they've got a lot to play for there. Philadelphia, New York Red Bulls. That game got delayed due to weather last night. It got postponed to August 13th. So we got to wait a little while for that one to be played. Nashville down 2-0 to DC United, the only team left remaining that had actually won this competition that was back in 2013. And Nashville scores 5 unanswered goals to beat a very poor DC United team. I don't know if Troy Lesesny or however you say his last name.
It's Troy Lesesny.
Well, it's insane that he still has his job. He has been
he got let go. Jimmy.
Oh, he did?
Let go.
Hey, Jimmy, you need to wake up, man.
Man, the West Coast gets up so late, man.
It does. Sorry. Well, he's gone. I don't know who's taking him. Bring Wayne
Troy
Rooney back.
lasagna, and I can't believe Troy is still got a job. It's crazy.
Yes,
Charlie. The news has only gotten to Mountain Time. Jimmy will get it in a little bit now.
I've been so sorry. Well, whatever. He's gone, and he should have been gone probably prior to them losing last night. But so Nashville's into their first ever semifinal of the Open Cup as well. And what's going to be cool, regardless of Philly's lost 3 Open Cup finals, so they've been runners-up 3 times. New York Red Bulls have been runners-up 2 times. So it's going to be nice that we're going to have a first-time winner of the U.S. Open Cup. I'm pretty excited about it. Tones, who do you think is the favorite based on what you've seen so far of the teams remaining?
Well, I'd been riding Chicago for a while before they got knocked out. And I said only because when this competition started that Greg Berhalter and the Chicago Fire would take this seriously. And they did with all of their lineups right from the start. But from what I saw last night, Nashville is on a roll right now. 4 wins in a row in the league. You add this one as a 5th win in a row in all competitions. I think they've lost. I don't have it in front of me. Actually, I have it to the side of me somewhere. They've only lost 1 game, I believe, here in the last 8 wins in their last 12, 8 wins in their last 13 now, or 9 wins. So, I mean, they're on a roll right now, and they look as good as anyone. And credit to BJ Callahan, because the one thing he did is get Serge and Mukhtar on the same page. Yeah. Serge obviously leading with MLS with 16 goals, 17 or 18 now with all comps. Those two have found a way to play together, which Gary Smith, that was the biggest issue, Chuck, is to get those 2 guys to play together. And BJ Callahan said that was pretty much his first mission, or one of his first missions when he got to the team. So they look strong to me.
They really do.
Yeah. How about you, Chuck? You feeling the same way?
Yeah, Nashville. I mean, Philadelphia, the winner of Philadelphia Red Bulls, I think that in itself will be a final. Nashville versus the winner of that. Austin, with Brendan Vasquez getting injured, I hope, I don't know if it's been released yet about how serious it was, but it looked like a pretty serious knee injury. And then you have Minnesota, who will be, playing at home if they beat Austin, because the winner of that will host the final. But I think the other side are the 2 stronger teams. So whoever comes out of that, I think, will be the favorites. And it looks for me that Nashville are just playing really well. Andy Nahar, what a signing he's been at right back, gives them more flexibility with so Hani Mukhtar can float underneath Sam Serge. And when you have a big man who can score goals given the opportunities, it's a cheat code in MLS. Oh, this league caters to attacking players. You just need them to finish. I was watching New England Revolution. I was broadcasting yesterday in Inter Miami. They gave the ball away so many times. Mm-hmm. They try and keep possession, but they give it away often in really tough spots when they try and build out. If the Revs had a clinical finisher, game over. The Revs win that game. But that's how this league is. If you have somebody who can score goals and is clinical, typically you're going to win a lot of games in this league.
Yeah. Whew, lots to unpack. I got lots of questions, but unfortunately we're at the end of the show. I do want to say that I think it's going to be Minnesota versus Nashville in the final. Minnesota will be hosting that one, and it's going to be hard to go against a team that's been excellent, but Nashville's been excellent as well. The Revs are going to rev. And listen, if you're going to give Messi easy chances, he's going to dunk on you. He's going to dunk on you.
The easiest chance you could possibly, we're going to head it to him in our own box. So that's a goal.
Yeah.
And then Sergio Busquets, the one thing he does well that everyone knows is you give him passing lanes, he can make a pass. You give him space, he can hurt you.
Yeah.
You're going to allow him to come into your own half with space and time and passing lanes and allow Messi to make a run unimpeded behind your back line. Of course, you are going to concede. So those are the 2 goals they conceded, and they ended up winning 2-1. So for the Red standpoint, I mean, what else can you do? Is almost you created all these chances with nothing to show for it.
Jimmy, just for the record, last night during the break, the rainstorm, we were sat at the desk and we were filling in, but we had the Inter Miami game on, and we were watching that game at the desk, and we put the local radio feed on last night. That's what we were listening to. I just got to bring that up. So Chuck E. Cheese was at our desk last night.
Chuck E. Cheese is on the desk. I love that. I absolutely love
guys.
it. All right, so some disappointing news. Ultimately, Brandon Vasquez, who had a non-contact injury against the Quakes in the quarterfinal of the Open Cup for Austin FC. He had just scored a penalty to tie the game up at that point. Looks like he has torn his ACL and is out for the season, which probably severely impacts any chance he had potentially sneaking on the U.S. team. That was much of a hope, given that he wasn't part of the Gold Cup roster, but you never know, right? Especially if you get hot at the right time, anything can change. So sending positive vibes to Brandon through this, and we wish him the best. That's heartbreaking for a lot of different reasons. It really is. All right, on that note, there's nothing else to really go off of that. We just wish him the best, and we're going to call it a show. That's it. So we wish you guys a great weekend. We'll see you on the other side. As always, if you haven't watched the Tyler Adams interview, go back and look at our videos on the Glosso America YouTube channel. It just dropped earlier today, and we thought it was a good one. And that's it. We're calling it a show. Thanks for hanging out with us. We'll see you guys soon. Have a good one. Later.